This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
And welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over some things that happen when you get lazy out there. And I know it's common to cut corners once in a while and not have the energy to get through the pool route. Sometimes you have difficulties and things happen, and that's, of course, an exception. But I think if you're lazy and cutting corners all the time, it really is going to affect your business and cause you to actually do more work than less work. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Here's one good example of by doing less work, you're actually going to be doing more work. And that is if the pool has algae and you're getting a little lazy with treating it, you're actually going to have a bigger problem on your hands than a small problem. I know that one thing that I was neglecting to do a lot, and this is something that I've really been on top of myself to do, and that is brushing every pool. Now, I used to do this a lot when I was working for a company when I first started out, when I was 16, 17 years old. I would do the full service, brush the pool, vacuum. I had a lot of energy. I was younger. I was eager to do the service right. As I got older and became more mature in the business, I started to neglect a simple thing, which is brushing the pool. And it wasn't until I had a podcast recording with Rudy Stankiewicz, where he talked about his algae treatment book, that I was kind of reawakened to the one thing that I was neglecting to do to a lot of pools, which was brush the pools thoroughly. And he mentioned it in this podcast, how brushing the pool is a great way to prevent algae. And so I just started religiously brushing pools again. I have the Sweepies brush that I use. I have the small 6-inch algae brush that I use on the step areas. And I just focus on brushing the pools. And believe it or not, this one thing that I did, this one change that I redid or reincorporated brushing into my routine, really did change the amount of algae in the pools. Now, of course, if you're balancing the pool water and using a chlorine enhancer, you're not going to get algae on a regular basis, but it just seems like there's going to be algae at some point in some pools, and it does happen. There's a lot of different factors that are in play that could cause the algae to develop in the pool. But I found that once I started brushing the pools on a regular basis, the algae problem pretty much went away and is non-existent. Even in pools where I would get a little bit of spot algae in certain areas, that doesn't happen any longer. So that's one thing that I've done to kind of get away from being lazy. Brushing the pools is something that I do consistently, and I actually enjoy brushing the pools now. I find it invigorating and it's a good exercise, and I don't neglect that anymore. And I'll brush a pool even if it doesn't look like there's anything there. I'll just brush it as a habit now. Another thing is that when you see a little algae bloom, and if you don't treat it right away, it could turn into a gigantic disaster. And I learned this the hard way when I first started learning pool service. I would go to the backyard. I would not have the liquid chlorine that I would need to add to the pool to bring up the chlorine to a certain level and treat the algae. Now, back in my day, we used a lot of sodium bromide. That's going away, and it's something that people aren't using as much, but I'd have to go back to get more chemicals added to the pool when I'm using that product. I was just too lazy to do that. It was hot. I'm not walking back to my truck. I'll just brush the algae off, and I'll add an extra chlorine tablet to the floater, and then I'll call it a day. Well, the next week when I went back there, the pool was just totally full of algae, and it took me about half an hour to 45 minutes to brush it, treat it. And I realized that if I would have treated the little algae bloom on the steps, this would not have happened. Now, that little algae bloom on the steps was visible, but there was probably a lot of microalgae in the pool that I didn't see, and by me not treating it, that microalgae just bloomed probably within the next day or two. So if I would have walked back to my truck that day, the week prior, got a gallon of liquid chlorine, added a little bit of sodium bromide, and treated the algae, I probably would not have been spending 45 minutes the next week brushing it. it was actually pretty shocking to me. I was like, what happened to this pool? I mean, was it running this week? Something happened here? It was just me being lazy, not treating that little bit of algae that bloomed into this full algae bloom. And of course, it took a lot longer to get it back in shape, took a filter cleaning, and that's just me being lazy at that point. And I think I encourage you that if you do see algae, that you treat it aggressively. Treat it like the pool is full of algae, because it probably is. There's probably some microalgae that's going to bloom in the full-blown algae that you can't see. And so if you don't treat that pool and you neglect that, if you get lazy with algae treatment, it's really going to come back to hurt you. It only has to happen to you once or twice for you to realize that, hey, I need to really be on top of this. I can't be lazy, and I have to go back to my truck. I'll go back to my truck and take care of it. Another good example of this is with a filter cleaning. So I've done this before where I get to an account, a defilter, the PSI is at 30, and I know that I have to take it apart and clean it. It's one of those things where it's scheduled for next month anyway, because it's like a little before the filter cleaning. I've already backwashed it twice. I'll just give it a quick backwash and call it a day, and I'll get to it next month. Invariably, when that happens, the pool will turn on me that week that I should have taken the filter apart and cleaned it, or there's going to be a major rainstorm or windstorm, and the pool's not going to function properly because I didn't clean the filter. And I've learned that if the filter is due for a cleaning, even if it's a month earlier than I need to schedule, that it's on my schedule for, that if I don't take that filter apart and clean it, it's really going to affect that pool in a negative way and cause me to do more work than less work. So I will take that filter apart and clean it. I'll give it a quick cleaning and put it back together. And I'll feel a lot better about myself after doing that, because then I know that I'm going to not have to worry about that pool. I've already cleaned the filter, and I've taken care of a problem that could turn into a big problem. And I know it's hard to kind of get into that mindset. You have 4 pools left. You take this filter apart, you're going to be behind by 25, 30 minutes. But I usually will do that because I know that I'm kind of going to prevent the pool from turning, and it does need it at that moment. When it needs it at that moment, you really need to clean it and take care of that problem. Another thing that this has happened before is that I'm really busy and I could easily skip a pool or two on my route. No one would know that I skipped it really, because the pool looks great. The customer is not really back there. They never see the pool. But invariably, when I've done this, and I've done this on occasion where I'm like really busy and I'm like, I'll just skip the pool. It's not a big deal. I'll just take one of my days where I'm not going to go there. And what happens is that I'll get a call like later that day, hey, I don't think you made it to the pool. And there was like a dead rodent at the bottom of the pool. I don't know why it happens the day that you skip the pool, but it's something that's so weird. It's kind of almost like there's a higher pool power that's like watching you, and you can't do that. I call it the pool gods. Whenever we have a windstorm that's unexpected, the pool gods are angry with us. And the same kind of thing, it's like making sure that you do your job and you do what you're supposed to do. But basically what happens is that there's like a dead gopher in there or a rat or something, and you didn't go there. One time I did this because I was doing filter cleanings and I was way behind, and somehow something got stuck in the cleaner, and the customer's like, hey, I'm not sure if you noticed, but the pool cleaner wasn't working, and if you have left already, I'd like you to come back and get it working. And of course, I didn't go to the pool, so I didn't know the cleaner wasn't working, and so I had to go back to the pool, or actually go to the pool for the first time because I didn't go that week, and fix the cleaner and get it working. So kind of feeling bad about it at that point. And I think if you get into the habit of skipping, it's going to become part of your personality, part of the way you do business, and then you're going to find yourself skipping pools on more than a regular basis, and even skipping for reasons that are not logical, like, well, I'm going to take a little extra long lunch, and I just won't go to that pool today. To me, that's something that you're getting paid for. You're getting paid for weekly pool service, and if you don't go there, then you are kind of not honoring the contract, written or unwritten contract with the customer, that you're going to do weekly pool service. He's paying you for something that you should be doing, and if you're not doing it and getting paid for it, it's not the right way to do business. And again, it's a slippery slope, because then you can get into a habit of making it like something that's normal in your business, which shouldn't be normal. It should be something abnormal. And there are reasons why you would skip a pool. There's reasons why you may be sick or tired. Sometimes if you're recovering from like the flu, which I've had before, you don't have a lot of energy, and so you can't really get to that pool because you just can't get over that hump and make yourself go there. And that's perfectly acceptable. Those are things that are normal. You're not superhuman. You may be having a bad day and you may be doing repairs and something got behind and you just can't fit it in. That's also acceptable. It's something that you couldn't control and time got away from you and there's just no way to get to all your pools before it gets dark and you skip a couple pools. That's understandable as well. It's not something that, like if you get a flat tire, which I've had before, and it puts you off by 2 hours, you can't do your full day at that point. It's just sometimes impossible because of the time delay and you have other things you have scheduled, you have repairs scheduled there. So that does happen and that's acceptable. But just skipping just for the reason of skipping is not something that I would encourage you to do. And that just, it shows a point of laziness in your business or care to the customers that is not acceptable. And it's not something that I would encourage you to ever get into the habit of doing. Something else that you probably should do on a regular basis, and you should have a routine where you're checking the skimmer basket and pump basket. And I think it's also a little lazy to see a few leaves in the pump basket and not empty it. Now there's a process. You got to turn off the pump. You have to add water to the pump basket, and there may not be that much debris in there, but it's something that you're getting paid for. And I think you should really do the full service that you're getting paid for. So that includes the baskets. And I know it's a hassle sometimes. You may just look at the pump basket and say, oh, it looks pretty good. There's some leaves in there floating around. But the customer may notice that and they may call you out on it. I've had people call me out on it before, believe it or not, where it's like, hey, I was at the pool equipment. I noticed that there's some leaves in the pump basket. And I know that's part of your service. So can you pay more attention to emptying out the pump basket? So you may get called out on it. You may not. But that's something that you should also be aware of. Not really a big deal, but again, that just kind of adds to cutting corners and not doing what you're getting paid to do. It's just like if you hired a plumber to do some work for you and you had him put in a toilet and you had him maybe change a faucet and you notice on the bill that he's supposed to change the valves also or the connectors and he didn't do that, or the old one still, but he charged you for it. Kind of the same thing. You'd be like, oh, he did this work and he charged me for something. He didn't do it. And same thing with when you're getting paid to empty out the baskets and you don't do it. So it's one of those things where you have to be cognizant of what you're supposed to do out there. And you should do it. It only takes a minute to do something like that. Now, a little secret here. I like using filter savers or skimmer socks on my account. So I rarely have to empty out the pump basket. I'll use canisters. If I have an automatic cleaner, I'll use the Pentair leaf trap or the Hayward large canister that have a mesh bag. And so really I don't have to clean out the pump basket very often because everything is trapped in the skimmer basket, even the really fine particles, and everything is trapped in the canister for the automatic cleaner. So that's one way to kind of not do it because you have things in place to prevent that. But I would recommend those skimmer filters, or not skimmer, the filter savers or skimmer socks, however they're called when you purchase them. They're like a mesh insert that you put in the skimmer basket. They're great, and I really use them on my accounts because then I don't have to clean the pump basket as often, which does take time, and the pump basket stays really clean and clear. There are certain pumps like the Pentair Whisper Flow and some of the larger Jandy pumps where if you get a little debris where the impeller's at, maybe St. Augustine grass or any kind of thin debris that gets in there, it'll pretty much stop that pump from running well and it'll cause the PSI to drop. So those little details are important and one reason why I like using the filter savers on the skimmer baskets. Another thing is also late billing. This is something you should be in the habit of having a certain day that you send the bills out. For me, I usually send the bills out on the 22nd or 23rd of the month. That gives the customer 7 or 8 days to kind of get things in order and pay me on the 1st. But sometimes if you get busy and forget to do that, and then you're, billing on the 29th or something, it's not giving the customer a lot of time, and it's not really giving you a lot of time to capture that money before the end of the beginning of the month. So try to be consistent with your billing. Pick a day that you're going to do the billing on, the 20th, maybe every month, and kind of keep that as your billing day. Also, when you're billing the customers, you don't want to leave services off of there. Sometimes you get busy. You're like, oh, I got to change the invoice and add a filter cleaning, or I got to add a pump basket that I put in there, or I got to add this to the invoice, but I'll do it next month. what's going to happen is if you put things off and don't build them immediately when you're supposed to build them on that particular month, you're going to forget, and you're going to forget to build them for that item, because I've done this before. And then sometimes if you forget to build them, you'll have to go back and check your old invoices to see, what did I build them for? Or did I build them or not? And that takes time as well. So what you're doing to save time at that moment is going to cost you sometimes more time when you have to go back and see if you actually build them or not, because you'll forget if you did or not when you were supposed to build them and you didn't build them. And also at the same time, you may lose that money because you may forget to build them entirely for that product that you put into their pool. So that's also something that's critically important on the business end of it, that if you are going to build the customers, keep it consistent on a consistent date, and also don't put things off that need to be billed that month, because chances are you're going to forget and lose money for that reason. And one more on the business side, if you have to tell the customer something important, like they need a new salt cell, or you have to replace a part, you want to do that immediately, because chances are if you don't do that, you're going to forget to do it. And I've done this myself, and I'm sure you've done this also. You are going to tell the customer that this needs to be done. You forget to message them immediately, and you get to the pool next week and you're like, hey, why didn't you get that fixed? Oh yeah, I forgot to send the message. That's something that happens all the time because you're juggling a lot of things. You have a lot of customers, and I think immediate things need to be done immediately. And I try to do this with everything I do. When I get a text message or get an email, I try to immediately, I'm not going to drop everything and get back to the person, but it is something that I want to respond to immediately, because I'll forget. If I get a text message and I don't respond to them within a reasonable time, within the 45 minutes or so, it'll just go down the list and I'll forget about it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll start a reply, and then if I'm busy, I'll just start a reply like good afternoon, and then I'll stop right there. And that way when I look at my phone again, I see that I have a text message starting and I have to go back and finish it. So that's kind of what I do when I'm texting people and I need to do something, but I'm busy. So if you're out there on your route and you need to text somebody about something or a customer, just start the message. That's what I do, my little trick. And then I'll go back and finish it when I have time. But as long as I know that I started it, I have them in that thread, I know that I'm going to have to go back and do that. But if you don't send the message, you'll never see that in the thread and you're going to forget about it. So all these things, of course, add up and they'll affect your business in a negative way. And I think if you can focus on these things and prevent any of these things from happening, I think being lazy out there is something that becomes your personality at some point, and it's not good for business. So I would say if you can stop it at this point and, don't have those bad habits developing, you'll be a lot better off for that. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu of 1,500 podcasts there for you. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguidecoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app.